do that. Okay. So welcome to our Facebook, not Instagram, we couldn't get that to work today. Facebook Live and our webinar today, where we are going to do things just a little bit differently. Specifically, we are going to, and I should just make sure that you are seeing me. Yes. Perfect. Right. Whoops. Hit the wrong button there. That didn't work. Oh my goodness. I thought I'd hit the right button and I did not. That is not coolio. You've probably just, what did I do there? Oh my goodness. Okay, can we fake that? No, we cannot. I am not sure what I've done technologically wrong here. Something, clearly, because I have totally gotten rid of myself on the webinar. Okay. You know, like I said, it's a technologically challenging day. And some days are just like that. I do not see how to. We will do this. And I'm going to call this back up. Okay. So would you just let me know in the chat box, can you actually see my smiling and somewhat stressed out face on the screen? Love it if you would just let me know if you can see everything, and that would be great. So I know I've got Sylvia and Sherry with me. Seeing a small box. Okay, so Sylvia, thank you. At least you can see me. I'm sorry, I have no idea what the heck I just did. That's wrong, but clearly I did something wrong, and oh my goodness, we're going to just move ahead because you know what? There's no sense in wasting time, right? I'm just going to answer the questions and answer any questions you have, and I can see my notes on the left, right, Sherry? Yep, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about before I even say it. So I'm not sure why I disappeared off there. Hide video panel, hide floating meeting controls. I'm looking at my options here, and yeah, that was probably not the right answer because now I've really disappeared. Okay, we're just going to go with you seeing me little. Just turn up your audio really loud and make this more of an audio experience for you because I do not know what I've done. And we're going to get rolling. So welcome. Thank you for tolerating my technical glitches today, of which there have been like a billion. Oh, well, some days are just like that. And what do? You move forward the best you can, right? There's no sense in stopping living for it. Today, I wanted to answer some questions for you. Questions that come to me frequently. Questions that have to do with iridology, but are not about doing an iris analysis per se. So we're not going to talk about iris markings. We're not going to talk about, you know, the how-to of iridology. We're going to talk about the business of iridology. And I'm going to start at the very beginning of this. And if you've received my email, which I think probably came out yesterday for you, and that's probably how you registered, you know what the questions are already because I've got them listed in that newsletter. I'm not going to necessarily address them in that order. Now, the other thing I want you to know is I am open to answering business type questions about iridology through the course of this little presentation as well, this little interaction. I don't want it to be a lecture per se. I want it to be more of a conversation. So if you have a question, please feel free to type it in to the chat box. If you're on the webinar or if you are with me on Facebook, type it into the comments there. And I will be checking those comments as well to make sure that we are covering everything. So the first question that I want to address is what styles of iridology have I learned? If you've been scouting around on YouTube and on the internet and various other places, you've probably seen a lot of conflicting information. You've seen a lot of very different information, and you may have seen information that resonated with you, which is maybe why you're here today, or you might have seen information that really disturbed you. And maybe that's why you're here today, is because you either want to check me out, okay, the pressure is on, or you want to have your mind put at ease. And either way, I am super happy to answer those kinds of questions. So what styles of iridology have I learned? When I started learning iridology 40 years ago, the only thing that was readily available where I lived is what we now call Jensenian iridology. And this is the type of iridology that was taught by Bernard Jensen. Being very young at the time, I was just 20, and I was just embarking on the study. I was in university studying education, elementary and early childhood education, then moved into secondary education, and that was just not going to be my happy place. So I ended up, after the equivalent of 4 years at university with enough credits to graduate, not enough in any one major, so I dropped out. But thank goodness I met the guy I married, because he saved me. And I don't mean that in any kind of a chauvinistic way. His mom was into holistic stuff, and she was my first iridology teacher. She had studied with Bernard Jensen a couple of times by this point in time. And so I started studying with her, and I learned the Jensenian style of iridology, and I started learning about herbs and nutrition and started building my business. Now, over the first few years of running my business, I thought I knew everything. I was green and wet behind the ears, as we say, and did iridology the way I had seen my mother-in-law do it, which is telling the client what is wrong with them from what I saw in their eyes. And shh, I don't want you to say a word. I'm just going to tell you what I see, tell you what's wrong. Okay. And as I did that for several years, I started to get an inferiority complex, because people would say, no, I don't have that problem. No, I don't have that problem. No, I don't have that problem. And so I started doing more research and trying to find what was I doing that was wrong, how could I do this differently? And so then Rayid iridology, which was the first iteration of the emotional or behavioral iridology, came through. And I studied that, dabbled in it a little bit, and later on, about 25 or 26 years ago, actually took a full course in it, and was fascinated by that, because it was more about personality and behavioral patterns seen from both sides of the lesson and the gift. Now, the lesson would be the struggle that we have, because everything that we have in life, with our personality, with our spirituality, with our relationships, there's always a positive and a negative. And sometimes we manifest the negative more. We are more on the negative side. And when we understand that that's where we are, we can take actions to flip it and come out on the more positive side, or we can learn how to work with it and turn it into a blessing. So I term it lesson and blessing. I think Denny Johnson termed it gifts and challenges, or something like that, gifts and trials. But I prefer lessons and blessings. To me, that's a more positive way of putting it. And I loved what I learned there, but it didn't help me much in my nutrition and herbal practice, because that was more of a physical thing that I needed. And so I was continuing to get more and more frustrated with what I learned on the Jensenian front, because I was never right. And I'd been taught that if we do the right diet, if we do the right supplements, if we do all these things right, we're going to see things change. We're going to see healing lines come up in the eyes. We're going to see the color change. We're going to see pigment spots, or psora spots, as we've been taught to call them, disappear. We're going to see these eyes that are kind of a mixed eye with lots of different colors, and we're going to see them become blue. And, you know, I put my clients through cleanses. They did special diets. We worked hard. I did that myself, and I never saw eyes change. And so as I was getting really, really discouraged, that was when I was blessed to learn constitutional iridology. And it took everything and spun it around and made it more of a This isn't about me having a crystal ball that helps me to look inside the body to tell the person what's wrong with them. This is about me beginning to understand what the inherent potential is of this person. What have they received from the past 3 or 4 generations? And we know that's how genetics works, right? What have they received from the past 3 or 4 generations? And we see that in their eye, and it shows us where the potential strengths and challenges are. And I don't like to call them weaknesses, because what I've learned is that if I see something that is an inherent predisposition to something not being quite as beautiful or wonderful as we want it to be for this person, the right thing to do is ask questions, because they may have already intuitively figured it out. So when I see that they are prone to a lot of predisposed to acid buildup in their body, and I ask them, do you have any of these inflammatory signs which would accompany an acid buildup? And they say no. I'm going, yes. Then I'll say, tell me about your diet. What are you doing with your foods? And they will then give me this list of foods that is like perfection for a person who tends to want to run high acid. So I don't need to say, you have a high acid body and you have asthma, arthritis, allergies, skin conditions, eczema, all this kind of stuff. Because they don't, because they've already learned how to manage the situation. They've learned how to regulate their acid through their food choices because it makes them feel better. So I've learned Jensenian, I've learned Rayid, and I've learned constitutional. Those are the 3 styles of iridology that I've learned. What I use now in my practice is about 90% constitutional and 10% Rayid. And I like that blend because the Rayid, and I do dabble in this a little bit in the class. We don't call it Rayid, but we talk about the emotional side of some of the traits, and that's the Rayid side coming through. Why I love that is because when I understand the Rayid, I understand more about my client. On the emotional side, their behaviors, their personality traits, I understand how to approach them better. I understand how to speak their language, right? So if I see someone who has contraction furrows in their eyes, I know this is someone who likes to-do lists. They're going to want a checklist of homework. They feel successful when they check things off. They like to accomplish things. They like to bite off more than they can chew. So I know I'm going to have to give them a short, precise list, not a long general list. Because if I give them a long general list, they're going to try, but they will 9 times out of 10 fail because they've bitten off more than they can chew. And so when I incorporate the Rayid, it's to help me understand how this person's body, how this person's mind works and how that integrates with how the body works. And when I understand all of that, I then understand how to communicate with them better. And I understand how to approach the homework side of things more effectively. And that gives me far greater success with my client, which is great because when our clients have success, they come back. They want to tell us about their success. They want to say, yeah, I did that homework 80% and this is what I'm feeling. And I get to go, yes, good on ya. Let's build on that foundation, right? So that's the styles that I've learned and the styles that I've used. So and I've kind of addressed this one a little bit, how does using iridology how does using iridology with my clients help me in my practice? Well, I've kind of covered that a little bit because you see, when I do this, and I've spoken with lots of nutritionists and lots of iridologists, they do it a different way. And the way they do it actually makes them work harder and makes them work more hours to get to the same place that I get to in less time. And that's okay. We all have a different practice style. And I'm not here to say that they're doing it wrong because they're doing it right for them. But I also know that with time, we often morph how we do things, right? We often change our approach. And so when I see a client, especially for the first time, and we've done the hi, hello, how are you thing, then my next thing is to ask them, what would you like my help with? And they give me their shopping list of things that are bothering them. And we talk about that for a bit. And I find out, what have they done about it? Are they on any medications? Do they have lifestyle or dietary things they're doing with it? Great. I find out what is the package they are bringing to me. And then I look at their eyes, and I'm fortunate that I have an iris camera. You don't have to have an iridology camera to do this work. It's where you probably will want to end up. But when you're starting, don't sweat it, okay? When we start, we all start out with just little simple handheld things, and it works beautifully. It's a great place to start. So I will have a look at their eyes. I will take photos, and I will put the photos up on my computer screen. And then I look at the eyes in the context of what they've already shared with me. So if they have said, I have, let's say it's a woman in her late 50s, and she's got hot flashes, she's got night sweats, and she's not sleeping well. Okay, so I look at her eyes. Now, there's nothing in the eyes that says hot flashes, night sweats, not sleeping well. Nothing. Not a single blessed thing, right? I can't look at one marker and say, that's the hot flash marker, and that's the lousy sleep marker. They don't exist. But I can look at the eyes, and with what I know about those menopausal years, both pre and post, I understand the physiology, that the adrenal glands can be involved, that the liver can be involved, that the body, because of those two things being involved, there may be some stress in how they're metabolizing things and how their liver is detoxifying things. So I can look at that, and then I can look in the eye to see, are there clues in the eyes that correlate what I'm thinking to what they've told me? And 9 times out of 10, I might see brown pigment. I might see specific pigment in specific organ areas. I might see contraction furrows. I might see some kind of a rarefication in a significant area that would have an impact on this. And it gives me the context of why this body is performing the way it is. And when I understand that, and when I understand that each of those markings can have an impact on 1,000 other symptoms as well, right? But when I understand how those markings could be explaining why this client has these symptoms, then I can go in from my herb and nutrition perspective and my lifestyle and all of that. And I can say, well, we've got this pigment in this area, and we've got this marker in this area, and we've got these contraction furrows. So we really want to go in from this angle and support this particular area in this way. Let's do these things with your foods. Let's do this with your supplements. And the beautiful thing is, because I've been able to explain it to them in relation to who they are, based on what I saw in their eyes and based on the story they've already shared with me, I make the homework relevant to them. It becomes very specific, very precise, very personal. And so that is how using iridology with my clients helps me in my practice, because it helps me to laser in on my client's needs and laser in on what my client can do, should be doing, could be doing for homework that could have an impact. So how does this help my clients? So how does using iridology with my clients help my clients? Well, it does a couple of things. Number one, it helps them to understand, as I explain what I'm seeing and how that is integrated with the symptoms they've brought to me, helps them to understand that I heard them really clearly. That is a really significant thing, a hugely significant thing. I have clients whom I know I could do their appointment in 15 minutes because they've been with me for 30 years, right? They come in for a few appointments, and then they fade off for a year or two, and then they come back for a few more, and then they fade off for a year or two. And I'm fine with that. But I could do their appointments in 15 years. I know them that well. And yet when they come in, they say, I want an hour with you. And I'll say, you know, we could do this in 15 minutes. They say, I know we could. I absolutely know we could, but I want an hour because you listen. Yes. That's a part of our role as holistic practitioners, is to listen, to make sure that we hear what the client is saying and that we understand it. So using iridology actually helps my clients to understand and know that I have heard them clearly. Using iridology with my clients, again, helps me to, because I understood them and I understand who they are, it helps me to distill down the program we are going to use. So they're not going to take 20 different things. I'm not going to make 20 different dietary recommendations. I'm going to recommend 2 or 3 supplements maybe, and a couple of key dietary changes. That's it. That's all. And I'm going to be able to explain to my client how those very specific changes are what they are designed to do for my client. Because I find that when I give 2 or 3 really key things, like eat 4 ounces of leafy greens, like get a kitchen scale and weigh it out, you're going to be amazed at how much that is. Eat 4 ounces of leafy greens every day and reduce your coffee to 1 cup a day. Very measurable, very precise. When they've done it, they can go, I did it, right? And that helps them to be far more successful than if I say, well, we need to alkalize your diet and we need to increase this and we need to reduce that. And I'm going to give you 3 pills out of this and 4 capsules out of that and 6 pills out of this bottle, and, you know, give them this intricate program. It helps me to help my clients. So my clients benefit by having a more succinct, more tightly focused program. That leads to success. Every client wants to be successful. Every client wants to be able to come back to you and say, I did what you said. I got the results you said I would get. You will never find a client who, if you give them this much homework and they couldn't do even 10% of it, they will never come back. They'll cancel their next appointment because no one wants to come back and say, I couldn't do it. I failed. I've seen no progress whatsoever. Nobody wants to say that. So iridology helps my clients by helping me to niche down their program so they can experience success, right? So they can actually do the homework, which is huge, absolutely huge. You know, I've worked with people who have been to other practitioners over the years, and some of them, as many of you know, I work with the Nature Sunshine product line primarily, and they'd been to other Nature Sunshine practitioners who were really good practitioners, but who weren't listening. And so when I'm thinking of one in particular, she came to me and she had a laundry basket full of supplements. And I said, which of these are you taking? She said, all of them. And I went, what? You're taking some out of every bottle every day? She was spending about $1,500 a month on supplements. I couldn't believe it. I knew who she'd been working with and who had been promoting these products to her. And I thought, she knows better than that. And as we worked together and as I did iridology with this client, I said, you know what? I'm going to take all of these, and I lined them up on a table, and I said, you've got 6 different things here that are working on liver. You've got 5 that are working on digestion. You've got 7 that are working on nervous system. You've got this many that are working on, and we were able to break it down into maybe 4 or 5 different categories. And I said, we don't need to work on all of these things all at once. In fact, we shouldn't. We want to work on these 2 areas at once. So I said, here's what we're going to do. The rest of these, we're just going to push to the side for the moment. We will use them up eventually, but for the moment, we're only using things out of, I think it was digestion and nervous system. And I said, with what I understand about you, from what I've seen in your eyes and from what you've told me, we're going to use them in this order. We're going to use this bottle of digestive supplements first in this way. When it runs out, we're going to go to the next bottle in the line, because your body will have changed in this way, so the next one will be appropriate. And then when that's done, your body should have accomplished this, and we'll go on to the next bottle. And so we gradually worked through this laundry basket full of supplements. And by the time we were done, she was using 4 bottles at a time, and that was it. And she came in and she said, my husband wanted me to thank you. I said, for what? And she said, because now I spend about $200 a month on supplements. Now we can actually afford to retire. Right? And that was because of iridology, understanding the client and how this client's body worked and what she really needed. We were able to save her so much money and allow her and her husband to retire because we had just put $1,200 a month back into their budget. That's incredible, just amazing. What styles of iridology do I use with my clients, and why do I use them now? I've kind of answered this already: constitutional and rayed. And I use them because they mesh really well, and they give me such a deep understanding of my client physically and emotionally and mentally. Now, that understanding of them physically, remember that with constitutional iridology, what we are really doing is we're never telling the client what is wrong with them, because the eyes are showing us the inherent predispositions, what this person has inherited from the past 3 to 4 generations. So with this information, with what we see in the eyes, we understand what questions to ask. And so the eyes teach us what to ask. We ask those questions as they are relevant to the story the client has brought in. And that gives us the understanding both of the eyes and of the body to know where we need to go next, what we need to do next. So why do I love the styles of iridology I use now? This is where it's at for me. I know Sherry has been a student of mine. She's finished her coursework and is hopefully working on her exam prep now, right, Sherry? And Sylvia will be starting the class in January. So this is great. We've got both ends of the spectrum for my students. This is wonderful. So Sherry knows how much I love teaching constitutional iridology. And it's just, why do I love it? I love constitutional because it gives me the tools to have that conversation with my clients, because it gives me the insight. I love it because, and this isn't meant to sound egotistical, but remember what I said about the ginsening, I was always wrong? I love constitutional because I'm always right. Because I'm asking questions, I'm not telling, I'm not giving answers from the iris reading. I'm asking questions and I'm gaining understanding. Always about understanding the client. You know, when people are on Facebook, and I don't care what herbal or nutrition site you're on, and they'll say, this is the symptom, what do I do with it? You know, you see everybody giving their 2 cents worth of, this is what we do with it, this is how I address this. And it's really kind of it's not the best way to do things, because addressing things based on the symptom, only the symptom, is a very allopathic way. You know, we've got a symptom, we throw this drug at it, right? Doing constitutional iridology lets us take the client's symptom, but instead of saying client has heartburn, we're just going to throw an antacid at it. We can look at the symptom, client has heartburn. We can look at the eyes to see if inherently there's a compromised stomach lining or a risk of a compromised stomach lining. We can look at the diet and see, is this client drinking like 4 cups of coffee a day? And when we put all that together, we can say, well, the heartburn is either from the coffee, or if there's an inherent marker for a compromised stomach lining, it's from that. And we know that what we need to do is then twofold: take the coffee away and do things to support the stomach lining and watch the symptom disappear. You know, and it's so different from, you have heartburn, well, let's take a herb that's just going to quell the heartburn, because that's not what we want to do. We just don't want to take the symptom away. We want to understand what's making the symptom worse, or what's causing the symptom, and then how do we strengthen the body? How do we improve the integrity of the body? And that's why I love doing constitutional iridologies, because it teaches me the questions to ask, and it helps me to understand my client, and it helps me to understand what is the best approach to help this client. And Sherry's saying yes, and I'm thinking she's saying there, but yeah, she could see in my teaching how much I love teaching constitutional iridology, and I really do, and hopefully it just shines forth. Is certification, and she says yes, right on. Thanks so much, Sherry. Really appreciate that. She also, the next question rather is certification important? And I'm going to answer this from a couple of different perspectives because it really depends on who you are and what you want to do with this, okay? And I say that because certification, and my course is designed to prepare you for certification with the International Iridology Practitioners Association. Okay, so is certification important? Yes and no. Okay, I don't think certification is important for everyone. I know that comes as an absolute shock, but I don't. I truly and honestly don't. Certification with IPA requires passing a rigorous exam process, which I help my students with. It also means that you've got to do continuing education hours every year. You also have to pay your membership fee every year, right? So there's a lot involved with it. And that, for some people, is just not necessary. If you are wanting to practice as a professional and maybe you've got herbs or nutrition or something like that under your belt and you want to use the iridology in conjunction with to make suggestions and to understand your client better, then certification may be important because you may have other skills in your repertoire that where you live require you to have insurance. What a doctor would call malpractice insurance, what we call errors and omissions insurance. So it's basically, it's helping to outline your scope of practice and saying you will stay within that. And if a client for some reason has a bad response to something you have suggested to them, you've got insurance to cover any potential lawsuits. I know that just sounds scary, doesn't it? But the fact of the matter is, if you're practicing within scope of practice, that should never be a problem for you, although depending on who your professional affiliations are with, you may need malpractice for those things. Iridology is a gray area. And the insurance that you get may have it as a gray area. It may not require you to be certified. It just may require proof of training, right? And so is certification important? Again, yes and no. It depends on where you live, depends on whether you have other modalities that require insurance, and it depends on whether any professional associations require you to have insurance. And so you need to do some background digging to find out if that's necessary. If you want to become an iridology instructor with IPA as your banner, so to speak, then you would need to be certified with them. So is certification really necessary? You know, not if you're going to use this for your own and your family benefit. Absolutely not. I think that it's overkill in that situation. If you have a very small practice and none of your other professional trainings require you to have insurance, or where you live does not require you to have insurance, then certification may also not be important. I would encourage you, however, to do at least the first parts of the certification exams because it will prove that you know your stuff and it will help to build your confidence. I also think that for some people, certification is important for a confidence thing. Even if you just do all of the steps of certification, certify for the first year, and then don't maintain the professional affiliation for certification, that's okay, because you've proved that you know your stuff. So I don't push all my students to get certified because I think that for some of them, it's not the right answer. Although if they want to, I'm happy to support them through that. I hope that answers that question and made sense to you. I don't think there is such a thing as a one-size-fits-all box on that question. What does it take to be successful as an iridologist? It takes having more than one modality. A couple of years ago, I had a client come to me. She'd been a client for a few sessions, and then she disappeared. And then she called and she said, could she come and just talk to me for an hour? She didn't want professional health advice. She just wanted to talk to me about the business of being a health practitioner. And I said, absolutely, I'll give you an hour. So she came in and she said, I've certified as an iridologist. And I was kind of surprised. I said, okay, who did you do that with? And she gave me a name. I said, okay, that's interesting. And she said, I want to know, how do I do this as a business? And I said, number one, didn't your instructor teach you that? No. I said, okay, number two, what other modalities do you have? What do you mean? Well, do you know herbology? No. Do you know nutrition? No. Do you know aromatherapy? No. Do you know flower essences? No. Do you have any body work, massage, acupuncture, Reiki, anything? No. Well, then you can't do iridology as a modality. She was very disappointed. And she said, well, why? And I said, well, knowing iridology and not knowing anything else is like taking your car to the mechanic. And it's been making a funny noise, and you pull it into the shop. The mechanic goes over, it goes, yep, I know exactly what's wrong with your car, but I can't tell you how to fix it. You're going to have to take your car down the road to Joe's place. He knows how to fix it. Oh. There's no client on the face of the earth that wants an iris assessment and only an iris assessment. They want to know what their eyes, what they see in their eyes means, what it tells them about their body, and then what they can do with that to help their body function more optimally. And so in order to be a successful iridologist, one thing that you have to have either before, during, or soon after you finish your iridology training is a second modality, right? And I suggest that herbology or nutrition are the two strongest modalities to add. Aromatherapy is pretty good. Flower essence is a little less so because they work more emotionally, which I know is the root of all physical issues as well. But it's a little harder to pinpoint and do that well with constitutional iridology. Other things that it takes to be successful as an iridologist, you have to keep learning. You have to be willing to give up old information and adopt new information as it comes available, because there is research still being done in iridology. That was why I left the Jensenian training behind and adopted the constitutional training, because the constitutional was more up to date, had continued with research, and was moving forward. So that's the second thing. The third thing it takes, and I really suggest this strongly, is stay involved with a community of like-minded iridologists. Right? That is so important. We've all heard the analogy, usually it's used in a spiritual context for religion, and that's, if you've got all of these embers together in a fireplace and they're all together, the coals stay hot longer. But if you take one of those coals and put it off to the side, it burns out much more quickly, and it gets weaker and weaker. And so it's just such a great idea to be surrounded with like-minded people in a community where if you have a question, you can ask it. If you have a case you're working on and it's not making sense, you can ask it, and you can be surrounded by things that are good and uplifting and focused on iridology as well. I think that's so important. And if you've been around the internet, there's a lot of iridology sites, like on Facebook especially, and even on Instagram. And I've just started, like I said, posting on TikTok. Not sure how well that's going to go, but there's another one on TikTok. And most of them are so out there that, and I'm sure Sherry will attest to this, that you have to be very careful where you hang out on Facebook, or you're going to run into the problem of getting a lot of conflicting information that's going to derail you. So choose your friends wisely when you're on social media, even when it comes to iridology, right? So important. So as you do that, I'm just going to remind you here that, and especially for the two of you who have joined me live, you are a part of the Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology clan. And Sherry says, yes, I had to learn and then go back and relearn. Absolutely, absolutely. And so we need to just, we've got the Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology group, which is for my students and for my grads. Then we have the Iridology Education Facebook page and the Iridology Education Facebook group, which is for people, they may be my students and my grads as well, but there's a lot of people there who come from other backgrounds in iridology, and we almost constantly have to rein them in, right? And we love that. We love them. And we love having the opportunity to share the current standing of constitutional iridology with them. All right, so I'm wondering if there's any questions. I haven't seen any questions come through, and I'm watching everything. So any questions out there? Nothing? Nothing, nothing? Well, I hope that answering those questions was helpful for you and that it made sense to you. For those of you who are maybe catching this on Facebook later on, just wanted to remind you that the course Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology is still in enrollment phase. It starts on January 15th. And you can get all of the details at iridology.education/priority. Seats are filling up, they are selling, so this is good. And we would love to back you up there and support you by having you join the course. Sherry asks, how much do I, so your first charge is how much and your second charge is how much? Oh, Sherry, that's a great question. There's a couple of things you need to take into account when you're setting your price structure. First thing is where you live, because different economies will bear different amounts, right? What your training is, so what other services you offer as well, and how long your appointments are. Now, you know from class that I am adamant that you do your work in your paid sessions and that you do not do work as in research and iris analysis and diet creation, things like that outside of your paid sessions, right? Adamant about that. So where I live, I'm revising my fee structure a little bit, simply because we're in a really bad economic downturn here. With everything that's happened up here in the oil patch. I live in an oil patch province where most of our workers, a good number of them, either were oil patch and everything else is a trickle down from the oil patch. And it doesn't matter whether you're working at McDonald's or whatever, we're seeing jobs lost. So a city of 1.25 million, we've lost over 100,000 jobs in this city in the last 2 years. And there are still layoffs happening now. So I've been charging $159 Canadian, which would be about 120, 110 American for the first session, which is 1.25 hours long. And second sessions, when it's 1 hour long, I've been charging the same amount. Okay, I may be revising that downwards, but I did a little experiment over November and December where I did a little promotion where I was charging $99 Canadian, so that'd be about 65 or so American. And I found that it did not bring in more clients, that the clients who are coming in are still coming in. And so it's like, okay, well, maybe I don't care. And I don't mean that in a harsh way, but it was an experiment that cost about $1,500 out of my own pocket. And so maybe I'm just going to go back to the $159 and just leave it there. Right? And whoever comes, comes. So again, consider what your market will bear. Consider your years of experience. I mean, I've been doing this for 40 years, right? If you're brand new at this, probably going to start out somewhere around, we usually suggest starting out at around the value of a 1 hour massage in your area. So if a 1 hour massage where you live goes for 60, that's maybe where you start. If a 1 hour massage goes for 110, maybe that's where you start. So that's a really good balancing point. A 1 hour massage is a good starting point for your rate. Any other questions? Did you say that we will learn read iridology? Sylvia, I'm not Rayid iridology, Rayid, R-A-Y-I-D. I understand what you mean. We are not going to learn it in its totality. Because it really is a separate, when I learned it, it was a separate 24-hour course. And so that would crowd out everything, right? So we dabble in it a little bit. I don't call it Rayid in the context of my course, but we do talk about personality traits. When we see this, we can expect to see these kinds of personality traits. Okay, so we're not going to learn Rayid as a standalone kind of thing. But we will integrate parts of it, concepts from it into, because it makes what we do with constitutional so much more effective and meaningful. Excellent. Any other questions? Okay, and I'm seeing another window here. Okay, so Sylvie's asking, do we get a certificate of completion? If you attend or complete 80% of the course, you will get and I track that through your student site. You either visit, and I mark attendance. Yes, I'm a school marm. I mark down, and if you attend 80% of the classes, then you will get a certificate of completion. Or if you were in a situation where you had to miss a lot of classes, but I can see online that you've gone through and you've done 80% of the classes online, then you will also get a certificate of completion. So a certificate of attendance, basically, is what you will get. Okay, so hopefully that helps as well. And then if you want to go beyond that to certification, when you are certified, you will get a piece of paper saying that you are a certified iridologist. And it is a 1-year qualification for the certification, as in that certification is good for 1 year, as long as you've got your active membership with IPA. Okay. What is your opinion of doing house calls instead of opening an office? If you're going to do house calls, and I understand because of your specialty, Sherry, that is a more reasonable approach for you because you're working with palliative care, basically. And so you really have to do house calls. And I would limit the distance you were going to travel. So I would literally, figure out how far can I get in what length of time, and you need to set your prices based on that to cover travel time and gas, right? Wear and tear on your car, servicing your vehicle, all that kind of stuff. So because of who you work with, who your clientele is, I understand the need for that, but I would definitely set parameters, or you might actually want to say, like, Calgary is the largest area, and not metropolitan, but the largest area square mile wise in Canada, when we take Calgary proper. And it's in rush hour, it can take you an hour and a half to get from one corner to the other, which doesn't sound like much in the US. I know your cities are massive, but you might want to say that, on Mondays, I'm in this region of the city and I'm only in that region. On Tuesdays, I'm only in this region, so that you go out there and you do your stuff there rather than here and there and, all over the place. And in your case, I think house calls are necessary. All right. Those are great questions. Any other questions? I actually don't recommend house calls for people who are not working in palliative care. For example, like Sherry works in an office setting, and so there's no need for her to do house calls. I do house calls for a very select few clients, and they're not usually my iridology clients. That I do a lot of high risk prenatal work and postnatal work. And so I will do house calls for moms within the first 2 weeks after birth if they're having breastfeeding issues, because I don't want them bringing a new baby out. Okay. And answered that one live. We answered that one live. We answered that one live. And I think would you give us tips on opening an office? We talk a little bit about business practices in the scope of the course as well. If you're wanting to open a physical office away from home, I would say don't. not at the outset. You've got to have enough income to cover your overhead for that. So, we'll talk a little bit about marketing and things like that in the scope of the course as well. So we don't do that right off at the very beginning, but it gets integrated. And we do a lot of that in our office hours calls. So Sylvia, you really want to come to the office hours calls because we do all kinds of business development chit chat there as well. Excellent. Those were great questions. Really good questions all the way around. Well done. Woohoo. Woohoo. Okay. Well, my friends, that is fabulous. I think that's it for today. I think we're going to call that really fabulously good. Thank you so much for being with me. I've had a ton of fun. It's nice to it's nice to talk iridology, not always be looking at eyes, right? And it's nice to do that back office, the back end support too. So I'm so glad you were with me today. And I look forward to seeing you soon, hopefully Tuesday at our next one of these. Take care and have a good weekend. Bye for now. Oh, we're not doing one Tuesday because that's New Year's Eve. It'll be January 3rd. January 3rd. We will talk to you later. Take good care and have a good one. Bye for now.